Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to another edition of Sunday School here at On Texas Football. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Thank you to our friends over at Duck Camp for sponsoring Sunday School. We'll tell you more about them later on in the program here. But on this edition of Sunday School, I want to link, the NFL and college a little bit. Listen, we know that Sark's a big NFL fan, so we know that he watches NFL football. So we know last weekend he found a way to watch the championship games. I know he's a busy man, I know he's got stuff going on, but we know he's such an NFL fan. I guarantee if somebody asked him, he's like, "Oh yeah, I saw the championship games." And he not only watches, but he studies the NFL because he'll tell you about his off season. He'll try to get to some off season training camps, or at least try to get to some off-season study with the Rams or maybe the 49ers or any other team that will allow him to get access, right? Because Sark loves the NFL. So I figured I knew he was watching the championship game, so I can try to deduce, right, exactly what he learned from the championship games that he could apply to Texas football. That's kind of what I want to get into here. So that's what we'll do. In the first lesson that you have to learn from championship weekend, something the Patriots did that I thought was really interesting versus Denver. The Patriots broke out a 6 O-line package, actually 6 plus O linemen. So they could sometimes had 7 O linemen, but they broke out kind of their jumbo personnel, and it was ugly, terrible, disgusting weather. All right. So it makes sense. They wanted to control the ball and they wanted to mitigate risk. But they used it 33% of the time, like 33% of their plays in the game. That was a season high for them. 42% of their plays in the second half. So it was one of their big adjustments as well. And it was one of the things that helped propel them to the Super Bowl. I actually, as a Texans fan, I'm used to seeing these 6 O-line packages because the Texans actually led the NFL in 6 plus O-line packages. And they would use kind of just a 6 O-lineman a lot of the times. And they would use them not just in, short yardage situations or goal line situations. They would use it, as part of kind of their regular personnel groupings. And it got me thinking, because Sark at one point in 2022 and 2023, he would use a 6 O-line package. He was, he would actually use it. And we'll get into some of those numbers. But we haven't seen it in the last couple of years. So I started thinking about the NFL and studying the rise of the 6 plus O-line package in the league. So it hasn't just been something that actually helped, propel the Patriots to the Super Bowl, and something that we've seen, the Patriots do, or just the Texans do. Turns out league wide, like a lot of teams are going to heavier personnel groupings. It's one of their evolutionary adaptations to defenses getting leaner, faster, lighter, honestly, right? And having more 2 high and even 3 high shell coverages, as though that teams want to play bully ball. They want to use mass and a girth advantage. I know some of y'all like that. So what they got studied, and I found this out in 2025, you had the most 6 plus offensive line plays. So basically plays with at least 6 or more offensive linemen since 2016. So heavier personnel groupings are definitely on the rise, and defenses who are using more base personnel, which is 4 DBs on the field, exactly that is actually increased as well for them, obviously countering the heavier personnel groupings with base personnel and taking some of the sub packages off the field. For the first time since 2009 in the league, you've seen teams play more base. Is actually in base personnel usage has increased for the first time since 2009. So you're starting to see these shifts with, offenses are starting to counter these very fast, light, aggressive defenses, but also defenses that are trying to limit the explosive plays by putting these deep safeties back there. They're just saying, you know what, we're going to give us lighter boxes versus lighter personnel. We'll take the advantage, and we'll actually try to maximize the advantage. And that's what you're seeing. So there were more 6 plus offensive line snaps. I looked at week 6 through 14. There were more snaps in the NFL of 6 plus offensive linemen in week 6 through 14 in 2025 than in each of the last 4 entire regular seasons. So it's been increasingly a kind of a cheat code for offenses against lighter boxes with lighter defenders. And if you go look at it for 6 line, it increased 84% overall from last season to this season, from 2024 to 2025. 7 of the 14 playoff teams were at average usage or higher, above average usage of 6+ offensive linemen among their personnel groupings. Pittsburgh and the Texans, Denver, Jacksonville, New England's in there, Green Bay's in there, Denver's in there. And let's get to Texas. All right, so Texas, and I was tracking it, so I was a big fan of it. Texas used what they call their Big 11, Big 12 package. And Big 11, Big 12 for them. Malik Agbo, most recently, I think Andre Carrick before that. Those were their extra offensive linemen they decided to use. And I think Sark picked it up kind of from Pete Carroll, because when Sark was in the league, the only coaches that were kind of still using it was Pete Carroll. It started to rise to prominence in the league around 2010, somewhere around there. But I know Seattle popularized it a lot because they used it a ton when Pete Carroll was there. And Pete Carroll being a mentor of Sark, I figured Sark studies Pete Carroll. Maybe he was like, hey, I can use that 6 line package. Either way, Texas used it in 2022, brought in Paul Christ in 2023 as a special assistant to the head coach. And he was actually pretty well known for extra offensive line packages when he was a head coach in his time at Wisconsin. So that's where I thought, oh man, Sark's actually cooking something up here. And I believe he was. He claimed the reason he stopped using the extra offensive line package was because in 2024, Juan Davis, he said Juan Davis is a better option because he got more, I guess, a threat to the defense with Juan Davis in there as opposed to bringing another offensive lineman in there. But yeah, that was, I think, the reason he gave last time. I think he was asked about it, but we haven't seen it very much, if at all, in 25, and we didn't see it much at all in 24 either. Very much, like very little. In 2022, you used it. I'm going to look at 14% of your plays is what I have it in 2022. And it was good. You're over 5 yards per rush, but you're only 6.4 yards per attempt. Now you were tinkering with it. You had a 5.5 yards per play, but your explosive play rate is what really stood out. You were 15% explosive play rate out of those because you had insulation. So I think you were using it in 2022 really to boost the running game, and you were trying to use it to impose your physical will with more mass, big humans on other teams because you had Bijan and Rojo in the backfield. I think it changed in 2023. And you started using it more as an insulation and pass protection, present power personnel, pivot to pass principles, because it dropped to 9% of your plays, but your yards per rush dropped a little bit, but you went to over 11 yards per attempt in your 6 line package. Your explosive pass rate went from, in 2022, explosive pass rate for you, I believe, was 17%, which is still really good. To over 20 to around 25% of your passes out of 6 line package in 2023 were explosive passes, and you did a lot more straight drop back from it to insulate Quinn to take shots downfield. Why? Well, Xavier Worthy, AD Mitchell, you upgraded the wide receiving core, and I think he wanted to take shots downfield, and it worked because your offense of identity changed a little bit from being Bijan Rojo focused to now a second-year starter in Quinn and then Xavier Worthy. And so that was a different focus. JT Sanders, that was a different focus, right, for the offense. And I thought it was actually a really good weapon, a compelling weapon for Texas, because you forced the defense to make a choice, right? You forced them, do they want to defend that extra mass you have with an extra offensive lineman on the field with base personnel, so match mass with mass and fewer DBs? If that's the case, hey, you got insulation and pass protection. They only got 4 DBs out there. Let's take some shots downfield. If they decide, you know what, we're going to leave our sub packages on the field, nickel and dime on the field, and 5 and 6 DBs, well, they're lighter, and maybe they even give you a lighter box if they're going to play too high shell. And why not take the advantage, a extreme advantage you have with an extra offensive lineman in the run game? And that's how the NFL used it. I think Sark was being a little bit more premeditated. I think he wanted to take shots in 23, and I think he wanted to kind of play bully ball in 2022. But it has since kind of disappeared. And I wonder, since it's now coming back in the NFL, why not bring it back in college for the same reason? Teams are going to play a lot of too high shell against Texas, especially with Cam Coleman and this wide receiving core and Arch Manning. They're going to play too high, 3 high. Why not give yourself a boost and also bring, there's 2 reasons, and you can bring the power element back. Remember we talk about having a power element to your offensive identity and your run game? And Texas doesn't really have that. They want to bring in a power back. That didn't work. They don't really have a power identity conceptually, schematically. Their outside zone is their bread and butter concept. Their offensive line isn't known for that. They're athletic, good pass protectors, but more finesse than physical. They're trying to bring in more physical tight ends, but why not bring in another offensive lineman out there and try to get an advantage that way? So I think ultimately, and like I said, in 2023, you averaged over 11 yards per attempt. So I think I would use it more to take shots downfield with this wide receiving core and with the issues you've had in pass protection. But it's interesting that, we haven't seen it much from Sark. And think about if you're Texas and you want to take shots, and you do with Cam Coleman, right? He led the country in contested deep receptions with 9 of them. He had the best catch rate among all college football receivers in on contested targets, 20 plus yards downfield, who had at least double digit contested targets, right? So he is no doubt a deep threat for you. And Arch loves the deep ball, right? Chicks dig the long ball, and so does Arch. I always say that. Well, he was top 15 in deep ball rate in college football last season, and top 15 in touchdown passes on deep passes in the Power 4. The Power 4 here with 13 of those. So he wants to throw it deep, and now he's got a true weapon to throw it deep. Why not give him some insulation in pass protection? So when you present power personnel and pivot to pass principles, you insulate pass protection. I know it's a lot of P's in alliteration, but that's what you do with the 6-0 line package. That's what the NFL's been doing with it. That's why the NFL likes it now more than just a short yardage package. And Texas is now more athletic on the offensive line, supposedly. And I think, the run rate for Texas out of 6-0 line package is around 69% in 2022. That number dropped to about 56%, I believe was your run rate out of the 6-0 line package in 2023. And you ended up with, like I said, taking more shots downfield with it and being really deliberate in the way that you attack teams out of that 6-0 line package. And your 72% completion percentage in 2023, 72% completion percentage, and you had 53% straight drop back. Now, this is the interesting part, because Arch is really good at what I always say Arch is really good at: straight drop back, butt naked drop backs. Take out the RPOs, take out the screens, take out all that stuff, and just go straight drop backs. Matter of fact, Pro Football Focus on straight drop backs, they have them 5th highest Pro Football Focus offensive grade. They have them with the 11th best, I think, passing grade overall in the Power 4 on straight dropbacks. And I always throw out there too, if you go look at Arch on straight dropbacks on 3rd and long and 4th and long situations, he's really, really good in those situations. And that's why if I'm Texas, I would think about bringing back the 6-0 line package, not only for the straight dropbacks that Arch is really good at, which it even helped Quinn be able to take more accurate, effective shots downfield, but also it would help you bring a potential power element to the run game, which is what the NFL's been doing with it. That's why they started using it more, is to bring more of a power element to the run game. And there's one other thing to look at when you're talking about this, because like I said, it's a lot of the NFL playoff teams were using it. And ironically, the 2 teams that Sark probably watches the most, the Rams and the 49ers, because he loves that West Coast, Mick Shanahan coaching tree. They actually use 0 snaps of 6 O-line packages, or 6 or more O-line packages and personnel groupings. But this is the Kim Kardashian, Nicki Minaj, Rita Williams size, Cardi B size, Megan Thee Stallion size, J-Lo size, but they still find a way to present power personnel and pivot to past principles. Shanahan doesn't need the 6 O-line package because the 49ers play the most 21 personnel in the league at 38%. Why the hell I need to present power to you when that's my identity is power? I got 2 backs on the field all the time. I got a fullback. I present power. I already got the physical element to my run game. And same thing with Sean McVay. The Rams play 13 personnel more than anybody else in the league, 32%. They got the power element to their run game. They got the power element to their identity, and they love to pivot and pass out of 13 personnel. Because they played 47% 13 personnel in the NFC title game. So, they don't need it. Some teams, when they're just playing 11 and 12 is not considered, it's more of a balance now. 12 is considered, I think 12 is still heavier, but some teams play it so much. Sark is, 35% 12 personnel on average. He's going to be 50% 11 personnel. That's 85% of your offense usually, unless you're going to not, like he did in 2022 and 2023, where you shave off some of your 12 personnel usage so you can be a little bit more diverse. But those other teams don't need it. And even the teams in other teams in the playoffs, they all have, like the Seattle Seahawks have Kenneth Walker. He's a physical back. And I went and looked it up. Hell, Seattle, they run 22 personnel, 22 2 backs, 2 tight ends, second highest rate in the league, and top 5 in 21 personnel usage. You know what I mean? So everybody's got a physical element to their running game, and a lot of times it's through personnel and even sometimes scheme. But the NFL is doing it right now with this 6 O-line package. Some teams are doing it with other heavier personnel groupings. My thing with Sark is I don't think the 12 personnel is getting it done in terms of just being enough of the way that you present power personnel to defenses. That's why you got to get back to the pony package, right? And I'm glad Raleek Brown and Hollywood Smothers are back in the fold, because that reminds me of that 2024 offense. And you were using in that 2024 offense, you were using more pony package, right? Your pony package numbers were up because you had Jaden Blue and you had Trey Weisner in the backfield. You got 2 backs that are similar, if not more up, in terms of more explosive than those guys, not Jaden Blue, but giving a more explosive combo potentially. Why not utilize it? So the pony package could be a way you present more power. I just told you, I think the 6 O-line package would be a way they do it too. They just brought in another tackle, so now they're going to bump Brandon Baker down inside. Hell, you're more athletic on the offensive line. Find a way to get 6 of those guys on the field and put together a package so you can take your shots downfield. That's another way to do it. One of the issues with Sark is that he has become less diverse from a personnel standpoint since he's got here. Right? Remember when Sark first got here? You had the Wildcat with Rojo. You had 6 O-line package in 2022. They used to run that 30 personnel, 31 personnel out there. You had your pony package that you're talking about. They were going to run some 20 and some 21. He was real diverse in the way that he presented different packaging and presentations that he had to his offense. And last year, you were basically 95% 11 and 12 personnel. I mean, you were averaging, if you go look at just 21 personnel. In the first 4 years, you averaged 7%, 21 personnel usage. This year, we saw hardly any 21 personnel. You had to be less than the Niblet package, I guess. If you want to count that, then you up to 2%. You're definitely below 7% your average. And Niblet is considered a wide receiver, so the Niblet package, depending on where they lined him up, but that's a different discussion. You didn't really utilize it like the way you did in years prior. There are a lot of exotic elements. I said these 6 O-line packages all but disappeared unless you were considered jumbo on a goal line or something. No Wildcat. Hell, you had it with Savion the Red. Remember the Red Cat? That was a power presentation because you needed it for short yardage. What's been an issue for Texas? Short yardage. You don't have a short yardage identity. And so will the Will the Wildcat come back for Michael Terry or for Nick Townsend or for Derek Cooper? Right? Like but those things have disappeared from the offense, and now you've become very, you become very predictable with the personnel you're going to present. And I think you got to get back to more diversity in your personnel. Since you go look at analytics in the league since 2016, each personnel group adds to an offense and basically increased EPA per play, which means increased efficiency overall. If you basically, they found that if you used only 2 personnel groupings in a game, it often led to a negative EPA per play. If you use just 3, it was almost a neutral EPA per play. But if you use 4 to 5 personnel groupings or more in a game, that it led to a big increase in positive efficiency in EPA per play. It just makes sense, right? It's tougher to game plan for all of these different scenarios. Matter of fact, that's the big advantage. I'll give you this before we get done here. The big advantage is that you don't have a lot of time, whether you be in the NFL or in college. I don't have a lot of time to game plan, to put together a game plan, and to meet with coaches and to meet with players about all the different scenarios that we have to be ready for, right? So if you have more scenarios that I have to prepare for, it's going to put me at an automatic disadvantage. This comes from an NFL executive. He said, if defenses prepare for an offense by primarily studying each personnel group separately, the more groups an offense utilizes that a defense prepares for, the quality of preparation will naturally decrease as time is a constraint. Of course. And listen, Sark himself, let me get the Sark quote himself, because Sark himself said the very same thing. And I had to go back and find it because I was like, I swear Sark was big on diversity and having lots of options in his offense. And I was right. Quote, the more we can do really well, the tougher we are to defend. We never want to be one-dimensional. We don't want to be a one-dimensional team. We really want to be versatile on offense, whether it's the style of runs, the personnel groupings, the formations, the motions, the shifts. And they've actually become less diverse since Sark has been here. So I think that's also a lesson too. I think you need to have more diversity. You know that the best offense in the NFL, they all have at least 3 or more, 3 to 5 personnel groupings that they utilize at a 5% rate or higher, because they just forcing defense to prepare for a lot of different scenarios. Same plays that they really love, but in different packages and presentations. And I think Sark's got to get back to that this offseason too. And maybe he will, because he's got all these different weapons that he's got to deploy. He's got to find different ways to do it. So I like that. So that's my first lesson, or at least lessons that Sark learned from the championship game. Maybe next week we'll get into the Super Bowl and what Sark's going to learn from the Super Bowl, or previewing the Super Bowl as it relates to Texas. I want to sort of make that connection too, because I know Sark, he's paying attention to these big NFL games. He's a big fan. All right. Also, I'm a big fan of Duck Camp, and you should be as well. Our friends over at Duck Camp, they make gear for folks who live for being out there, whether that's in a duck blind at sunrise or on the 40 acres for those Saturday kickoffs. Born right here in the city of Austin, Duck Camp builds best-in-class hunting and fishing apparel that works just as well for a full day in the field as it does for a long day of tailgating. From sun protection shirts that keep you cool during those early season scorchers to their iconic game series hats that feel like instant classics. Duck Camp gear is ready for football season, hunting season, and every season in between. And get out there and stay out there and hook 'em horns with our friends over at Duck Camp. Shop Duck Camp at duckcamp.com. Thank you very much to Duck Camp for sponsoring Sunday School, and thanks to each and every one of you for watching and for listening. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes. He's the real MVP. For Matthew and for Duck Camp, I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Until next time, hook 'em horns.